And now it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Tanya Gans, who will introduce Debbie Silver, our presenter today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Melissa. Yes, my name is Tanya Gans, and I am the acquisitions editor for the leadership list, and I have had the honor of working with today's presenter, Dr. Debbie Silver. She is the irreplaceable and irrepressible, one of the nation's most popular keynote speakers and presenters. Any of you who are listening to the chat before we just began speaking, I think you can tell what a fun ride this is going to be. That energy is always here with our presenter today. So with over 30 years of experience, this former Louisiana Teacher of the Year has spoken all over the world, including 49 states in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Europe, the Middle East, and so much more. Through her research, her outreach, and maybe the best of all, her humor, Debbie seeks to help educators reclaim the joy and hope that has led them to the profession in the first place. I want to say that Debbie is just about as real and as authentic as you can get, and she is quite simply a breath of fresh air. In this field that can be loaded with so much jargon and a lot of good intentions that miss the mark, it's really wonderful to have a presenter who has their pulse on really what's going on the ground and is always looking to see how she can make educators' lives and students' lives better. She is the author and co-author of several best-selling books. And again, it's always that focus on how to make educators and students flourish. Now, her co-author, who is not here for us tonight, he is also the co-author of Deliberate Optimism, Jack Berkemeyer. He's also an author, a highly sought after presenter, and a humorist. So when you bring two funny people together to write a book, you get some really great stuff on your hand. For over a decade, he has served as the assistant and executive director for the National Middle School Association. He is also the owner of the Berkemeyer Consulting Group, where he focuses on helping districts make measurable change, and the owner and director of Nuts and Bolts, Never Boring Conference for Educators, a title that's pretty hard to forget. So together they have come together once again in the second edition of Deliberate Optimism, Still Reclaiming the Joy in Education, which is the basis for tonight's webinar, What Color is Your Mood?, to write a second edition that has key updates and promises to have relevant information for educators who are dealing in what I think many consider turbulent times in education today. So if you are looking to get your teaching tingles back, that makes this, that's the kind of tingles that makes this profession hands down one of the most rewarding. I know you're going to get so much out of this tonight. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Debbie Silver so you can all figure out what color your mood is. Debbie.
Thank you. Okay, let me just pull mine up really quick. So are y'all seeing that, Tanya?
Yes, I see it.
I love it when technology comes together. So when we were talking about, what color is your mood, we were thinking about, some people describe their mood as, well, I'm in a dark place, everything just seems kind of gray and black and cloudy, and I can't get my joy back. I can't get my macho back, my inner strength. And then some people, sometimes when you're delighted, it's more like, oh, I'm in a really light mood. We think of colors like orange, but I don't really want to dwell on specific colors right now. I want to talk about how do you change your mood? When you're at that point where things do seem very much down and very much not going the way you want to in education. What do we do about that? So I'm going to start with a quote that was given to me when I was an undergraduate, and this was in a College of Education. And if you don't have this, everything that you're going to see that I present today, I'm going to put this into a handout and I'm going to give it to Corwin. And when you get your link to the presentation, you'll be able to get all of these. But I want you to have this one because let's look together at what Chaim Ginott said. And this is years ago, but it's so true. Concerning a teacher's influence, I've come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It's my personal approach that creates the climate. It's my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and a child humanized or dehumanized. And I want to start with that basic premise, that we really do have this responsibility. We're building a new generation, guys. That is what is in your hands, our next generation. And what we have to do is realize the importance of, how we react to them, how we mitigate our own problems, our own drama. How do we get through the mire, the challenges? How do we do that? So we're going to be talking today about some things that I think you probably already know all these things, but maybe just a reminder. And, when I'm talking to future teachers, and I'll tell them, when you get to school, here's your job. Whatever drama you brought with you into the parking lot, leave it in the car. And whatever's going on in your life at home, and I know some of you are undergoing tremendous challenges, but you have to put yourself above that. You have to compartmentalize. And when you're with kids, be with kids. And I'm talking about not just physically, but emotionally and every way be present. And I get these grumpy teachers that go, well, you know what? I'm just not happy all the time. I'm going, none of us are, but you don't have to be happy to be cheerful. And guys, I'm not saying this is easy. How many of you felt like for the last few years or the last 3 years that it's just been one of those days? And I know this, we went through COVID and we just worked our little buns off. A lot of us with very little support, very little direction, just overnight, we did a complete pivot of how we were teaching and resources that we didn't even, we developed skills we didn't yet have, but we needed. And people just got really tired. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, COVID's over. Now we go back and everything's going to be just peachy, just hunky-dory. And has it been? No, it has not. So let's talk about this just a minute. So let's do a little interaction here. Okay, find your button that will allow you to raise your hand. Okay, so you can show each other in the chat box about your mood. I want to see if you can relate. All right, so if you're looking at this teacher, how many of y'all just feel like this sometimes? So you're going to raise your hand if, when I read a statement, if it's true about you or if it's ever been true about you. We're going to find if your mood needs just a little bit of work. Okay, so let's just do a quick overview, a quick assessment of who's in our audience today. So get your little hand button ready. Raise your hand if you've ever taken a flask, a shiv, a voodoo doll, poison darts, true serum, or a vial of holy water to an IEP meeting. Okay, raise your hand. If by October your classroom decor can best be described as there appears to have been a struggle. Raise your hand if you've yelled mosquito and slapped a colleague when there really wasn't a mosquito. Thank you for your honesty. Raise your hand if you've recently gone street rat crazy on the person who parked in your parking spot. Oh, like they don't know. Raise your hand if when confronting irate parents, you introduce yourself as someone else and pretend you can't speak their language. Raise your hand if you're presently considering a career shift to a job as a sign spinner and they don't have any homework. Raise your hand if your mind presently feels like an internet browser with 19 tabs open, 3 of them are frozen, and you have no idea where that stupid music is coming from. Raise your hand if you regularly take the same overpacked backpack, tote, or crate home and back without ever touching the contents inside. And finally, raise your hand if you still believe that learners come in all shapes and sizes and you do your best every single day to give every one of your students a reasonable chance at success. And guys, that's what I'm here to tell you today. You are in the right profession. You just may need a bit of reframing. So when I'm talking about reframing, and I'll come back to this, but a lot of y'all that have a background in counseling have heard the term, but it basically means like if you go to have a picture framed, and a lot of times they'll change it out. They'll put a different mat and a different frame. And when they do that, it brings out different things in the picture. You may see something you didn't even notice before, just because of the way it's framed. It doesn't change the content of the picture at all, but the way you frame it will change your perception of it. How many of you've ever had a kid that was just weird? I mean, that kid, weird. And you're thinking, what is wrong with this kid? I've never had a kid. How could this kid be this strange? Then there was parent night and you met his parents. Oh, yeah. It helps you put a perspective on it. So we're going to talk about some perspective taking. But what I want to talk about when I talk about optimism, y'all, I want to be very clear here. I'm not talking about that toxic positivity where we can just shellac over every problem in the school by going, teachers do hard things. Yeah, we do hard things, but we need some support. There are some real infrastructure problems that need to be addressed, and we need to talk about that. It's not about asking teachers to do cartwheels of joy on your way to the auditorium for an in-service on bloodborne pathogens. That's just not going to happen. Or skipping merrily down the hall to meet parents who are so angry they want to rip your head off and spit down your throat. Okay, that's not realistic. What we're talking about in our book is about a realistic optimism. And that means we realize what is going on. We realize the problems that are there. We realize the boundaries that are there. But what we say is, okay, it is what it is. And how are we going to circumvent that? How are we going to go around that? How are we going to make this where we can deal with it, where we can keep moving forward? So that's really optimism. Dr. Wayne Dwyer talked about, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I know a lot of us sometimes have seen a situation and we make all kinds of assumptions about it. Maybe a student, maybe a family, maybe parents, maybe a colleague. You know, we're just ready to ride in on our little white horses and, you know, just give them heck, you know, this shouldn't be happening. Let me do this corrective action. And then when you find out all of the circumstances, you're like, oh, my bad. So part of reclaiming our optimism, guys, is about learning to make less assumptions about things and to give people the benefit of the doubt. That's something I'm working on really hard right now. That's my this year's big area of strength that I'm working on, is trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, to assume they're doing the best they can and not get offended by what we call triggers. Now, I know when we're talking about equity and we're talking about fairness, there's been a lot of talk about triggers and microaggressions. And there are many of those topics that need to be addressed and need to be acted upon. But I think too many times when you're looking for triggers, then you become a very negative person. Like, here's an instance. How many of you have ever just gotten cut off in traffic? And what did you choose to do about that? Okay, don't show me, but a wave of sorts. But, you know, if you change the way you look at that and you think, you know, maybe that guy just got some bad news, maybe he's rushing to the hospital, or maybe he's got a job interview and he's so excited he didn't see it. But it's all the way that you frame things, how you're going to react to it. And I think that all of us have certain triggers. And as I'm talking about this, if you want to type some of yours in the chat box, it'd be interesting to see, do we all have things that the minute you hear this, you get that negative knee-jerk reaction, like, how dare you? I'll just show you some of mine. Okay, you can agree with this or not agree with it, but here are some of mine. When a student says, this one kills me, I wasn't the only one doing it. Like, just what we're talking about here. Or when a student says, well, it's not my fault. You should have reminded us. Oh, you know, let me just get your throat. Those are triggers for me. If you have some, just write them in the chat box, because there's probably some I hadn't thought of, but probably were my triggers too. But let's think about from their parents, all right? Are there things that parents say that might trigger you? Well, the way we did it when I was in school was, okay, I don't even want to hear the rest of that statement, right? I'm just like, I'm assuming that you're just coming from a time that you want to impose on me, and I'm already closing my mind off. Or how about when the parent says, don't forget, I pay your salary. Oh, don't even. But those are triggers for me. And when I realize it, and then I have a little talk with myself about maybe I should be aware that certain things just set me off. And I'm talking about school right now, but I bet with your family, with your significant other, even maybe your biological children, there are certain things they say that when you hear it, you're just like, coworkers. Well, look who got all the good kids this year. You know, like, no wonder your kids are well behaved. No wonder your kids are engaged. No wonder they're making. Here's one. This was literally said to me by a teacher one time. She said this in front of a group. Well, you know, the parents would like me too if I just gave all the kids good grades. Ooh. How about from administrators? Here's one of my triggers. Well, our administrative team just got back from a new conference, and we have another totally new program we'll be rolling out next month. Or my favorite, oh, you're having a tough year? Well, I guess you just need to be more awesome. All right, so we don't want to spend any more time on triggers because we all might have our blood pressure rushing up. But here's the point about that, guys. Triggers breed negative reactions. Triggers, let me go back to this one second. Triggers get your blood pressure up. It is that knee-jerk reaction. You're not even going through your prefrontal cortex. You know, you're letting that amygdala, that emotional part of your brain, just kick you into action, kick you into thought, without ever letting that go through any kind of a thought process. And, you know, even if you're correct, is an overwhelming response going to be the solution to your problem right now? Is this going to be in line with what your goal is? So I just read about this and I'm so excited because it makes perfect sense. And y'all may have all heard of this before. I may be the last one on the bus, but there is something called glimmers. How many of y'all have heard of glimmers? You can just raise your hand in the chat box. But when I read this, I went, oh my gosh, this is it. A glimmer is anything that brings you instant joy, instant calmness, instant happiness, instant peace, instant safety. It's a word that was developed by Deb Dana, a psychotherapist and an author. This was in 2018. She wrote a book and she said glimmers are things that immediately calm us, center us, bring us joy. And then she went on to say that if it's a prolonged glimmer, we'll call it a glow. But think about this. Triggers activate your stress response, that fight, flight, freeze response. And when you get that part of your brain, that control, then you've lost your ability to make a reasoned decision, to make a reasoned plan of action. You just kind of reacting instead of being proactive. And it's bad on your nervous system and it causes dysregulation. However, glimmers and glows, expanded glimmers, help us feel calm, connected, and grounded. So let's think just a minute. And I would love for you guys in the chat, just think of some things that automatically make you feel that calmness, that safety, that happiness. It can be a smell, an aroma. It can be a song. It can be a person. It can be an event. It can be a picture, a photograph. You know, I think a lot of us in our classrooms will surround ourselves by things that we love that bring us joy, because even if we didn't know the word glimmer, we know when I look at these things in my classroom, it reminds me of why I do what I do. You know, it's like kids' work and notes from kids. I'm just thinking about, instead of, oh God, that lesson was a total flop today. You know, I worked so hard to get this done. And yet, instead of, you know, I think Jonah, I think he got it. I think that connection is going. Or, you know, Marquetta, when she looks up and goes, and y'all look at my face, because this to me is one of the biggest glimmers for me as a teacher is when a kid goes, I mean, I can sustain a whole day of work on that. Just one kid going, you know, I got it. I got it. So think about those. I want you to write those, but I want you to think about what are some of the things that do that. You know, I'm just thinking, we'll be talking about our collegial relationships in a minute, and, you know, a shared laugh with a colleague. Maybe the world just seems to be falling apart. You know, and I'm a middle school person. I've taught every grade, but middle school is it's my bag. And I love being in the middle school because they're just, you know, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. They're so funny. And sometimes, you know, they can step on your last nerve, and they know your triggers. They're good at triggering you. But when you can look at a colleague and both of y'all just roll your eyes and just go, oh, God, middle school, you know, you kind of know it's going to be okay. You've got that person who shares with you. You've got that person there who's your comrade. No matter what happens, they're there. That's your constant. So what I'm saying here is you want your mood to be improved. You want to have that orangey, yellow, bright kind of a mood. You don't want to be in the dark, gray, brown, black mood. Then we got to think about our glimmers. And maybe one of the things you're going to want to do after this webinar is just make a list. These are my personal glimmers, and this is where I'm going to put my focus. You know, and it can be as small as, you know, I walked by, I saw the custodian, and we just shared this moment. You know, we just smiled and, you know, keep doing it. And a lot of these guys we can create for ourselves. But I'm going to come back to that when I talk about radical responsibility. But for now, let's just focus ourselves on, rather than being controlled by the triggers in our lives. And I think the first thing you do in order to gain control over the triggers is to write them down, to acknowledge that this is something that I choose to react to. Now, you understand it is a choice. All right. The way you make it a choice is when you get your head up into the prefrontal cortex, where you're making a reasoned decision. If you're letting the trigger reaction happen just without ever going to the prefrontal cortex, then you really never get a chance to think about it. You're just giving in to your amygdala, your emotional, your limbic system. And that will not ever improve your mood, ever. We need to get to a place where we feel in control. We want our self-efficacy. We want to feel like, you know, we can make this happen, that the world isn't just going on without us. So when we wrote the book, and we had written originally 5 principles of optimism, but those were kind of redundant. So we simplified it, and we said, here's what you want to do. You want to have better moods. You know, you want to be optimistic. Okay, here are the tenets. And I just added on to this slide. Noticing glimmers helps us stay regulated. All right. So what are the principles of deliberate optimism? They're pretty simple when you get down to it. First of all, you've got to gather accurate information. Operative word here is accurate. Coming back to that in a minute. You have to control what you can, which also implies you have to let go of what you can't control. You have to do positive things on purpose, regularly. And then we need to own this profession. And I call that radical responsibility. And I'll explain that more in just a moment. But let's talk just a minute about accurate information. There is so much, as y'all know, there's so much fake news out there. You want to get a lot of crazy talk, go to the teacher's lounge. You know, guys, that is rampant with teachers that they're going, did you hear this? Did you hear that? You know, we're equally ignorant because none of us were at the school board meeting or at the legislative session. And yet it spreads like headlights, you know, when you get this bad news. And I think one of the things that we have to do to remain optimistic in our world is find a news source that you trust. And I'm not ever going to tell you what that should be, because they're different and you have to find out what you think is authentic and go to that. But I will tell you one thing I know, and that is go to your source. So if you heard that a colleague said something really negative about you, I would go to that colleague and just say, this is my understanding that you said this. Can you help me understand what you meant by that? Because a lot of times they didn't even say it, or they didn't mean it, or it was the hormones talking, but you don't let that burn you up inside. So you go to the source, whether it is a student, a parent, a colleague, one of your administrators. I feel that way about legislators, guys. I have no problem picking up, getting on my computer and writing a letter and just saying, what are you thinking? Have you lost your mind? But I think too many of us hear things and we accept them as truth. And sometimes you hear your own inaccuracies coming back, which only reaffirms that, well, that's got to be true. And guys, these days, it's pretty hard to discern what is the truth. Let me show you something about accurate, all right? If you're looking at your screen right now and you're looking at those two cushions, what if I were a newscaster and I said, I'd like you to look at these two cushions. They are exactly the same color. Now, I know most of y'all, I don't know what your monitor looks like, but I'm assuming most of y'all are going, no, they're not. Okay, guys, here's what I want you to do. Take your hand or two fingers, I don't know how far you are from your monitor, just cover up the middle part of that picture. And what do you see? They're the same. They are the same colors. Now, if any of you on this webinar are artists or art teachers, you're going, I told you guys, it's all about perspective. It's all about light. Guys, there are so many ways now to fake it. And now with AI coming on board, I don't know how we're always going to find the truth. But I think we have to really strive to find information that is accurate. That's your beginning. It's about looking at finding out what is accurate to the best of your knowledge, pursuing it to the source, getting as accurate a picture as you can. And I'm talking about, your gut feeling, but also your research. I think all that plays in. But then we also have to learn how to reframe. And I brought this up earlier. This is about kind of flipping things the way that you see it. And I've got, I love this, little fly, the little turtle, the box turtle that gets flipped on its back. And if they can't get flipped back over, that's it for them. They're toast. But look at this little guy. Oh my God. What can I do? It is about taking a situation that seems really dismal, but reframing it in a different way. I'm going to show you this next one because it reminds me so much of my youngest son. I have 5 sons, and this would be my youngest son, Kit, growing up, all right? So we have the picture of the contest winners. Look at number 3. This would be Kit Pace. Now, look at number 1. Oh, man, I didn't get 3rd. Oh. Cats and dogs. I don't know if you have both. I do, but this is very true. The car trip with cats and dogs. Here's the dogs. Yay! Yay! Here's the cat. We're all going to die. Same trip. Let me show you something. All right. No matter what you're doing, you need to look up at the screen right now because this is only going to be here for a second. But I'm going to show you some letters very quickly. And what did that say? You might want to type it in the chat or just write it on a little piece of paper. Or just say in your head, okay, I know what that said. And, okay, and if you're like most people, you saw, I am nowhere. But how many of you saw it as, I am, hang on, let me go back. I am now here. Oh, well, I thought it said I am nowhere. It could have. Guys, it's the same letters. It's just, how did you choose to view those? But it's the same letters. So it could say, I am nowhere. It could say, I am now here. But how did you choose to see that? And it's kind of like in life. Do you see this as another burden, another responsibility, another, oh, they're putting too much on me? Are you choosing to see it as, well, here's an opportunity, I hadn't tried before. Here's a way to make some headway here. Here's something new that could, broaden my horizons. How do you choose to see it? The one that I've probably talked about the most, especially when I'm talking to young people, is to control what you can. And I'll give the example of how many of the teachers' lounges that I've been in, guys, we're all just like little Don Quixotes. We're in there just tilting at windmills. Oh, ain't it awful? Look what they're doing now. This is so terrible. Did you read what they're doing? Did you hear what the school board, did you? And guys, here's what I ask teachers all the time. How much of that do you have direct control over? Talking about the parents, talking about legislators, talking about, the allocation of funds. How much control do you have over any of that? And you're probably answering like most of us, I don't have any. Then why are you lamenting over it? Why are you wringing your hands, complaining, upset, losing sleep, losing your positive attitude, just becoming a defeatist, pessimist? Look what they're doing to us now. This is Eeyore. Oh no, look what happened. How many of y'all know people that live that life of Eeyore? That learned helplessness. During COVID, what we had was a lot of circumstances over which people had no control. So they started perceiving themselves as a loss of control. And a lot of people just gave up. And I know adults, guys, who have never been the same since the shelter in place and the COVID scare. They have not been the same. It's like, why do I even try? I bet you do too. I'm going, you've got to get your self-efficacy back. You've got to figure out, what can I control? I can always control my effort, and I can always control my choices. But any time spent on things that are not, that over which I have no control, is wasted time. Unless you're figuring out a way to circumvent it, to minimize its effect on you, a way to avoid it. But for the most part, what we have to figure out is, what are the things I can control? To me, this is one of the central tenets of being optimistic. And when I'm working with kids and they're saying, and when I say kids, I've taught all the way through 12th grade. Well, I've taught all the way through college, but let's just go public school, 12th grade. And I have kids that go, well, you don't understand, my parents this, or my brother's a smart one, or da, 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 da. And what I've tried to teach them to do is, all right, so you're having a problem, working your math problem. And instead of lamenting all this, background, let's just start right here. What seems to be the problem? And there may be several factors. Okay, over which of those factors do you have direct control? And there'll be several that they don't. I have a son that has dyslexia. He cannot control that. He has no control over that. But what he can control is some of the compensatory things he's learned to do to go around the problem, to still be able to achieve his goals. And I think when we teach that to kids, we're empowering them. And that's what I want to do with us as teachers, guys. I want us to be empowered. We do have so much power. And yet when we start feeling pessimistic and we have this defeatism, it's almost like we're giving up. There's nothing I can do, that doesn't work. And I do a lot of coaching for teachers, and I sometimes get that teacher, nothing I do makes any difference. I'm like, then what are you doing here? I mean, seriously, if you truly believe that nothing you do in your job makes a difference for kids, why are you here? There are a lot of good people in this world that are not teachers. And what you're telling me, you're not. You are a total waste of clothes. Okay, no, I'm going too far. But y'all understand what I'm saying? If you don't believe that every day you are making some strides, and some of them are very incremental steps, some of them are larger steps, but if you don't believe with all your heart and all your soul that ultimately you are doing things that are going to create a more efficacy, kids with self-efficacy, generation of kids that are decent, make good citizens. If you don't believe that, then what are you doing here? Because that is the underpinning of what all good teachers do. So I want you to think just a minute, all right? And I do this in workshops. I'm going to try to do it here. I hope y'all are going to be able to see this, but I think I've got this worked out. But let's think about just a minute about what are some of the things that if this got changed, our profession would be so much easier. This would really make my life a lot easier. But you actually have very little control over it. All right. So I want you to write those down, maybe in the chat, or maybe you just scribble over to the side if you don't want to share. But what are things that really do impact us as teachers? And there's a lot, but we really don't have control over that. And I'll just show you something. This is one I did with teachers in a workshop. And this is a tea bag, guys. And when I send you your handout, I'm going to show you how to make this with a tea bag. I'm going to show you something else in a minute, but it's really a cool activity. So we emptied tea bags, we got the tea out, and I don't know if y'all know this or not, but tea bags are cylinders. So just, put the tea aside, take off the string, take off the staple, and we got a marker and we wrote down. And these are what these teachers came up with. And this may be some of y'all were saying the same thing. We don't have control over the attendance. We don't have control over generational poverty. We don't have control over unreasonable parents. We don't have control over standardized tests. We don't have control over there's not enough prep time. And, you could probably cover this and still not have enough room to write everything. But here's something I want you to do. And I'm hoping y'all can see this. But I've got just a little bitty short bag here because I want this to go. But let me pull this down just a little bit so you can see me. But you write all those down. You can actually just do this for yourself sometime when you're feeling kind of blue and you're like, no, my life's just going to hell in a handbasket. I want you to write down all the things you cannot control, okay? And if you do it on a tissue like a tea bag, this won't work with everything, but if you do it on a tea bag, here's what I want you to do. We're going to go against the laws of physics. Now, we're not going to light it at the bottom. We're going to light it at the top. But I want you to say, these are things I wish I could control. But to be honest, I can't. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to let them go. And off they go. And I just caught the ash. But it's a pretty profound little ceremony because it's a reminder that I can't stand the way some of the things, I can't stand the way some of my kids are reared. Guys, I cannot stand that my kids have to go home to some of the homes they go home to at night. And I know you feel the same way. When I first started teaching, I just wanted to put the kids in the back of my car, or in my trunk and sneak them home and hide them. But okay, let me just be a cautionary tale. The law doesn't really appreciate when you do that. We won't go there. But you know what I'm saying, guys? There are so many things that we wish we could control, but we cannot. So I'm not saying that you go, well, world's going to hell in a handbasket. What am I going to do? That's not what I'm saying. I love what Michael J. Fox said. He said, acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It means understanding that something is what it is, and there's got to be a way through it. So we recognize generational poverty, which is one I dealt with for the first 17 years that I taught. We recognize it and we say, God, with all my heart, I wish I could change this for kids. I hate this so bad for them. And, we now have crime. We have things that are going on and we're going, if I could just get in there and fix it. But guys, we can't. So in order to keep our optimism, what we have to say is, but here's what I can do. And this is what I will do. And so we start focusing on not only the things that matter, but the things over which we have control. And that is really important because we only have so much energy and so much time and so much talent. Wouldn't it make more sense to focus it on that overlap of things that matter, really matter? And I'm not just talking about standardized test scores, and you'll know I'm not. I'm talking about what really matters. And then I want us to think about, and out of these things that matter, over which of these can I have control? And that's where I'm going to put my effort. That's where I'm going to focus. So this is one of the things that has inspired me. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and I know a lot of y'all have read his book, but he was a psychotherapist during World War II. He was Jewish, and so he was interned into a Nazi concentration camp. Every kind of degradation that could be done to a person was done to him and to his fellow prisoners. It was man's inhumanity to man at its worst. Many people in the prison camp, they just chose to die. It was easier than living with that kind of pain on every front. But he didn't. He made it through. And in his book, he talks about how he did that. Excuse me. But when he got out and resumed his practice, people said, wait, you're just going to go right back to work? He said, yes, I have important work to do. And they went, but wait, and they didn't know about post-traumatic stress syndrome then, or they would have called it that. But they said, how can you just move on? I mean, aren't you angry? Don't you want vengeance? Don't you want to get even with these people? How can you just let them get away with what they did? How did you not get destroyed? And this is what he said. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So here's what I'm saying to us, guys. We've got to stop listening to the noise. There is so much noise going on in our society right now. And if we tune into that, if we focus on that, if we allow that into our brains, then there's no place for us to find our joy and our happiness and our moods. We have to do what Frankel said, and that is understand that inside of us, in your brain, in your heart, it's you. It is you. And no matter what is going on around you, we choose to say, this is the truth of me. This is me in my very best self. And I'm going to pursue wherever I work, whatever I'm going through, I'm going to do what's right for kids. That's how you find your optimism. You do something positive, do positive things. So many people go, well, when I get around to it, I'd like to do this or I'd like to do that. But guys, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a science teacher and I'm very familiar with inertia. And I'll be the first to tell you I have an inertia problem. It is really hard for me to get started on something. Conversely, it's hard for me to stop once I get started. But I think so many people lose that opportunity. They just sit back. No, it's not going to work. Nothing I do helps. You hear I'm going backwards on this. But I think when we do positive things, not only is it helpful to our students and our colleagues and the people around us, but it impacts us. Think about sometime when you had something like cleaning out a closet and you're going, oh, God, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But finally, you go, all right, just do it. And you get in and you clean out one little part. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, while I'm in here, I might as well do this and I might as well do that. And then all of a sudden you're going. See, I think and when I talk about radical responsibility with our colleagues, I think we need to focus more on building collaboration, of doing things for each other. So when you're feeling really bad, maybe look at a colleague that's in a worse situation than you are, and maybe just, pick a wildflower and stick it in the vase and just put it on their desk. Or just walk by and smile and go, just want you to know how much fun it is being on a team with you. Or let me take your lunch duty today. And I go, I don't have to do that. I go, oh, I know I don't have to, but you're worth it. Or step up to that custodian and tell them, I don't know how you manage to keep this building so clean, but just know how much you're appreciated. Because when we start reaching out beyond ourselves, it builds happiness, it builds those connections. And guys, we're wired for connections. So when people say, well, I'm being asked to give all this personalized feedback to all these kids and I don't have the time. Okay, give it to one or two students. Well, I don't have time to call all these parents that I need to contact. Really? Call one. Well, shoot, I can't even fathom having to learn any more of all this new technology. Could you learn one new thing? I'm bothered by all the catty remarks made in the lounge. Stick up for somebody. Be that person. Stand up. I think y'all are being unfair here. I'm just not going to listen to it. Or you're not able to connect with a kid. Here's a positive thing, guys. I did this all the time because I'm a writer. I wrote to kids all the time. And when I was really, really having trouble connecting with a kid, I'd write them a letter and I would tell them my very favorite things about them, the things I valued in them, and the dreams I had for them. And I mean, they generally really like to get in that note from me, especially if you put it somewhere where they can just find it. Don't make a big deal about giving it to them. They go, do you like it? Do you like it? No, don't do that. Just put it somewhere where they'll find it. And don't even ask them if they got it. But what I found was when I spent the evening writing those letters to those kids that were really stepping on my last nerve, it caused me to reframe that we were talking about earlier. Because I didn't want to put down horrible things. I want to put down some really true stuff. And when I reframed, I had a different attitude. And then they had a different attitude. And sometimes that's all it took. But lastly, guys, here's the thing. We teachers have to take our profession back. And I'm going to call that radical responsibility. I know there's a lot of talk about that now and all, but I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about. I think we have to get over the egg carton model that we always had. When I started teaching, and some of you even when you started teaching, it was go in your room, shut the door. We didn't even share with other teachers because we don't want them to use my stuff. This is my idea. I don't want that. She's copying me. Well, big deal, if it's for kids. So here's where I think we've made a mistake. I think, first of all, and I tell principals this all the time and administrators, we don't give teachers enough time to just be adults with adults, that we need less encumbered time with kids. And if you look at Finland and Sweden and Japan and all these places we're compared to, look at their teaching day. Now, their day is about the same, but their time with kids is about half what we have. So what we're doing is trying to change the tire on the car while it's still rolling. But I think what we have to do is start saying, this is my profession, this is my school, my team, my kids. And guys, we've got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot. We have got to stop denigrating other schools, other teachers, other classes. We are the worst. And people think, we're the experts because we're at school, so we're the ones that know. And I think what we need to do is to say and to assume the best about all our schools, whether you're talking about private schools, public schools, schools in the ghetto, schools in the suburbs, schools in the, the highfalutin areas. What we need to do is go, you know what? I'm sure those people are doing the best that they can with what they have and what they know. But all of us need to stand together. We need to be unafraid to talk to each other. What is it about teachers, guys? We'll talk to kids all day long. We'll even go talk to the principal if two of our little friends will go with us. But we don't talk to each other. We don't say, yesterday when you went off on that kid, that was just so not like you. Help, is there something I can do to help here? Because these kids think so much of you. And, that kid looked like it really hurt him when you said that. But we need to give each other that collegial feedback, but it's constructive feedback. So that means that we don't gossip, just don't. It never helps. And guys, when you indulge yourself with, I guess you heard what she did. Well, at least I'm not as bad as. Guys, that never promotes good feelings, ever. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help the situation. We've got to start assuming the best about each other. If you want to improve your mood, you be that person that goes, oh, is this going to be gossip? Let me just step out, guys, I'm not going to be a part of this. But we're going to say maybe that he had a reason for that, or maybe she had a reason for that. Maybe she doesn't know how to do that yet. Guys, we veteran teachers, we have to embrace our new Gen Z teachers and our millennials and anybody else that's new to the field. We have to embrace them. We have to share our knowledge with them, but we also have to be willing to hear them because they have so many cool ideas and they don't want to be dismissed as, well, you're brand new. Guys, they are brand new, but let me tell you what, they are innovative. They have amazing ideas. We need to get together and share that. Somebody asked me not too long ago, they were going to come to one of my sessions. One of the younger teachers said, well, how long have you been teaching? I don't know that you have anything to offer. I mean, really, seriously, what do you have to offer me? And I just looked at her and I smiled. I said, wisdom. Guys, we all have to share. We're in this together. And so I am begging, for us as faculties to support one another, to do team building. Let's do this with our teacher friends. We're doing SEL with kids. Let's do it with our teams. Let's do it with the adults at school. We could use it. We're talking about, radical justice, restorative justice with students. Maybe we need somebody to come in and train us about how do we get past, negative feelings? How do we get past, the little hormones? How do we get past these things? Because we have an ultimate goal. So this is my plea. Let's commit ourselves to loyalty. Let's commit ourselves to our class, our teams, our administrators, and our schools, all of our schools. And let's stop building on defeatism and ain't it awful and the schools are going to hell, to, we're doing the best that we can right now. And when we hear something about another school, what happened, what went on, we go, I'm quite sure they're doing the best they can with what they have and what they know. And if you have a really positive suggestion, then why don't you take it to them? And that's what we're going to do in our school. So own our profession. But guys, when I say own it, I'm saying, let's be proud of it. Let's say, when people go, what do you do? Let's say I am a teacher with the same kind of fervor that Fraser says. I don't know if y'all watch Fraser or not, but ask him where he went to school. I went to Harvard. Well, I'd love for all of us to, when people say, so what do you do? I am a teacher. I am a teacher. Yeah, or an administrator or whatever. I love Brene Brown. I know you can't win everybody over. And in the book, we also talk about some ways that you can circumvent the very, very negative, energy vampires around you to get around it. You are not the jackass whisperer. But what we can do is we can try, and we can remain as positive as we can. One of the things that I think is so very important these days is, guys, we've got to keep our sense of humor. And I don't mean that you have to tell jokes. I don't mean that you have to be a stand-up comedian. I mean, we all have to agree that, oh my God, teaching today is with all these human foibles. You've got to laugh. If you don't laugh, you're going to cry. And it has all of these positive effects on your body. And, we keep talking about self-care. That's another big part, of keeping your optimism. But I'm not going there today because we don't really have time for all that. But I will say this about self-care. We do need to surround ourselves with friends, because we probably spend more time with our colleagues than we do with our family members. And we do need to learn that when we can laugh about something, and I mean in a healthy, inclusive way, not exclusive, then we can see that the problem's probably less formidable than we thought it was when we were dealing with it by ourselves. There's an unspoken message and a chuckle that says, I promise you'll get through this. And about self-care, just one thing I want to say here. This is very hard for me, by the way, but I think it's important, so I'm going to use the time to tell you this. In 1990, I was lucky enough to be selected Louisiana Teacher of the Year. Okay, don't be too impressed. There were only 2 people eligible that year, and the other one died mysteriously. No, see, I really wanted to win, and I did. No, I'm kidding. But if you had asked me that year, I would have said, okay, I did get Teacher of the Year, and I'm just kind of waiting on my Mother of the Year, trophy, because at that time I was single and I had 3 little boys, and I'm trying to make it all work, and I'm doing, like all of you guys. And I thought I was doing a really, really, really good job, because I'd take them to school with me and we do all these altruistic things. And so a few years ago, when the boys were all grown and they were back in the house, they were talking about me being a teacher. And my eldest son said, Mom, you were always a really good teacher. And I'm just grinning. And he said, but you realize sometimes we just needed you to be our mom. I said, what? He said, Mom, we'd go to school early with you. And we come in your room, but you're the science teacher. You had all the cool stuff. So all the kids came in your room, same after school. And if we tried to go to Dairy Queen after school and get a snack, we couldn't even sit with you because the other kids would pile in and push us off the bench. And I remember I was at a parade one time. I was trying to tell you something, and a kid knocked me down because he was trying to hug. Oh, I want to hug Miss. I was Miss Pace then. He said, you know, at a football game, we couldn't even sit by you because the kids just kept coming in and scunching us over. And sometimes at night, I was going to tell you something, but you were on the phone with parents, or you were making stuff for your class. He said, Mom, you were a really good mom, but you were a really good teacher, sorry, but sometimes we just needed you to be our mom. Whoa. And all I could think of was, how did I not know that? How did I miss that? I think like a lot of y'all, I taught kids that were so deprived that I just felt like I owed them everything. And I guess I just took my kids for granted, thinking they would get it. And only now do I know that was the wrong thing to do. And I know a lot of y'all are young, and I'm saying this for a purpose. I want you to read this when it comes out on the handout, but it's something that Ben Holgram wrote when he said, before you open the door, this is when you get home in the afternoon, before you open the door, put a smile on your face. It doesn't matter how your day went or what you're doing or if you're starving. For 30 seconds, at least pretend that you're elated to see them. Make them feel like you were looking forward to getting back home. After all, they're your favorite people in the whole world, I hope. But your attitude sets the tone for the rest of the evening within 5 seconds of walking in the door. Coming home is the most important thing you do. That's your whole life. Fix it. Start today. I think when you're at school and with your colleagues, you should be totally with them in every sense of the word. If I had it to do over again, when I left school, I'd leave school and I would put that same kind of energy into the people at home. Just wanted to share that with you. One other thing very quickly, because I'm kind of proud of this. I think one of the ways I stay optimistic is I'm always trying new stuff, even when it totally doesn't work. So I'm praying this will work. But I love Kelly Clarkson, by the way, and she lives not far from where I used to live. And her song Breakaway, because I was thinking about, you know, if you're having a mood that you don't like, how do you break away from that? So I tried to make a little quick video with her singing in the background. So I'm praying this is going to turn out okay, but y'all bear with me. I'm not really good at this yet, but I did make this for you. So this is a summation of what we've talked about today. This is, I love this quote. Sometimes the strength within you is not a big fiery flame for all to see. It's a tiny spark that whispers softly, you've got this, keep going. Here is Kelly Clarkson. Whoops. I hope. And now we're spinning. Okay, try it. Oh, shoot. It's spinning. Let me go back. Try one more time. Come on. Y'all aren't hearing the music though, right? Shoot. Okay, in your head play Breakaway. Okay, hopefully some of y'all know the song well enough that you could play it. I don't know why it worked every time that I practiced, but of course it didn't work with my buddies here. This is my information, guys. If there's any way I can help you improve your mood, reclaim your optimism, here's all the ways you can get in touch with me. It will be on the handout. And very quickly, I'm going to turn it back over to Melissa D.
So
Wow.
thank you all so much for joining us. We did not have time for questions, but Debbie, thank you for providing your contact information so people can reach out if they do have questions. And thank you for coming to our webinar, everyone. We'll see you next time, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Bye.